So in this video, I'm going to do some fine art architectural photography. I'll take you along on my photo shoot, and I'll show you how I process them in Photoshop. Well, I am in New Haven, Connecticut this morning, and I'm here to do some architectural photography. Did some research, found a pretty cool building, walking over there right now. So I'm just making my way around this building. It's got some great lines and angles to it. And I'm just trying different compositions. So I get a lot of different choices. I can play with it later in Photoshop, but it's a really chilly morning, but I don't mind being out here, I must say. Well, pretty nice building. Got some good shots. What I want to do now is show you how I process them in Photoshop. So let's jump onto my computer and we'll dive right in. Well, welcome to my computer. It's a lot warmer in here than it was outside. I really love the shoot that I did on this building, and I chose this image to show you how I processed it. So I'm in Photoshop now. I did some work on this already in Lightroom. I converted to black and white, pulled up the shadows a bit, pulled down the highlights, but really didn't do that much. What I want to do is show you how in Photoshop I turned this image into this image. Now keep in mind there's many ways of doing the same thing in Photoshop, and so this is just my methodology. If you have a different methodology, please put a comment down below, and I'd love to hear about it. To save time, I've already made a number of selections. So I selected the sky, different parts of the building. To do that, by the way, I mostly use the polygonal lasso tool, which these are straight lines, so that was relatively straightforward. I usually zoom way in when I do it to make sure I'm getting right on the edge, and that works pretty well. You'll see the selections are generally pretty good. So when I start, I typically start by making a copy of the background layer. If you're on a Mac, just hit Command-J to do that. And I'm going to start with the sky. And so I can load selection. By the way, to save selection, you make the selection, you go up to Select, and then hit Save Selection and think of a name for it. And so for me, of course, sky's a pretty good name for the sky, so I started there. For most of the adjustments, I'll be using the Curves Adjustment layer. For the sky, however, I am going to use the Exposure Adjustment layer. And for these kind of images, I typically darken the sky quite a bit. And so I'm not going to go all the way to black like that, but I'll pull it back so there's a little bit of luminosity in the sky, something like that. By doing that, it really makes the building pop even more. Now, one of the features of the building that I really liked was these overhangs on the lower part of the image. So I really wanted to make those pop. And so let me pull up one of those and I'll show you what I mean. And so if I go down to, I call it bottom row, but you can see where the selection is on the lower part of the image. I'm going to choose a curves adjustment layer, and I want to brighten this up quite a bit. And so by pulling up on the line, you brighten it up, and you can see it pops quite a bit. It looks a little flat going across, so what I want to do is add a gradient. And so I'm going to reselect that part of the image. I've got my gradient tool selected. I'm going to choose the linear gradient tool and simply drag across from the right. My foreground is white, and so you can see I get that nice bright spot on the right side, and then it pulls back towards the left. I'll deselect. Hit Command D, by the way, to deselect. But you can see here's the before, here's the after. Makes a big difference. And in fact, I want to do that with the other parts of the overhang. And so I called it top row left. Maybe not the best name, but same thing. I've got the selection. I want to go to my adjustment layers and choose curves and pull up. And you'll see it's going to brighten up quite a bit. Really popping against that building. Again, I do want to add a gradient, so let's reselect it. I've got my gradient tool selected. And again, I'll pull back from the right, and you see the right side of the selection is quite bright, and the rest of it fades away to where it was before. And so already the image is starting to take on the style that I really like. So here's the before for these things, and there's the after. In fact, let's even do a little bit on the right side of these overhangs. This would have been a little bit more in shadow, so the whole piece would certainly not have been bright, but maybe a piece of it was. You can even see it from a reflection. So again, let's go to selections, and I'll choose the bottom end of it. Pretty straightforward. Choose my curves adjustment layer, pull up. This time I don't want it to be as bright, and I don't want the much of it to have that brightness. And so I'm going to reselect. I've got my gradient tool and pull back a little bit, so you just get that bit of brightness on the left side of this. In addition, that square above it, I want to do that too as well. So I'll load selection. I think I called it square. And adjustment layer, curves adjustment layer, pull it up, and I can reselect it. And with my gradient tool then pull back from the left, and so just up in the up and corner I get a hint of luminosity. Give you a sense. Let me do a couple more selections. I won't do the whole thing, but I thought at the bottom of the image there's this little triangle that you can barely see, and I wanted to make that pop just a little bit because there was a light on inside. And so I'm going to, I called it bottom right triangle, that little selection down there. By making that pop though, or brightening it up, it does change things. So again, I'm choosing the curves adjustment layer. It's very dark, so I'm just going to brighten it up. Don't want the whole thing bright, and so I will reselect, have my gradient tool, pull back from the left, and you see part of it's going to be bright then. And then the same thing on the left side. Let's see, bottom triangle left, got the selection. I'm going to go to my curves adjustment layer. You can see on the histogram it's very dark, so by pulling up I bring some brightness to it. I will reselect, got my gradient tool, pull back from where I want it to be bright, and just have a hint of brightness. Let me do one more piece. I did some work on the upper part of the building, not too much, but normally you would see some of this brightness on the very bottom in that triangle show up on the underside of this overhang. Not too much of it, but let me just choose that. Load selection. You know what? I don't think I selected this already, so let's just do it. I'll show you how I do it actually. So I'm going to go to my polygonal lasso tool. I'm going to zoom in quite a bit so I can get right on the edge. I'm going to find that exact edge. These are straight lines, so I can just pull back and choose the area I want to select. You try to be accurate. Take your time. I can bring this over to just on this edge, pull it back up, and I've got my selection. Let me zoom out a bit. And so I'll go to the curves adjustment layer. I'm going to pull it up, and you see the whole selection gets bright, but I only want a little bit of it to be bright. And so I'm going to reselect. I'm going to choose the gradient tool, but this time I'm going to choose the circular or the radiant gradient tool, which is right here. And I just want this corner to be bright, so I can just pull in from here, and you'll see and you play with it a little bit, but you just get that corner that's bright. You do get that hint of a reflection of the brightness. So here's the before, here's the after. I think it adds something to it. I went on and did more, but you get a sense of what I did. Hey, if you found this video to be useful or enjoyable, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and please do leave comments and questions down below. I know I went through this quickly, and so I'll be happy to help you with any questions you have. Have a great day.